All right, Mary Kay, there's no laughing because this is my whiteboard. I said, don't laugh. Stop it. Okay, so normally this is much bigger behind me, but this is what you get. All right, so here we go. Eyes on me in 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you, class. Today we're going to start a new section on light reflection and light refraction. This is important because reflection and refraction are important behaviors of light, and we can use those to explain the operation of lenses, prisms, optical fiber, as well as natural phenomena such as rainbows, mirages, why the sky is blue, why sunsets are red. It's also important, as always, that we start with vocabulary. The reason we start with vocabulary, you'll remember, is because as we're discussing and we're sharing knowledge, we don't refer to things as like that thingy or that one line or that part over there. Designations have names so that everyone is clear as to what is being spoke about. And so to start off our vocabulary, we're going to discuss the 3 types of angles that we will be using. Namely, the angle of incidence, the angle of refraction, and the angle of reflection. So first is the angle of incidence. Now before we get started, class, you'll see you guys have a paper like this. And anytime we are talking about reflection or refraction, we are discussing how light travels from one medium to another. In this case, water to air. And anywhere that 2 mediums come in contact with each other, that contact plate is known as the surface. So when we first talk about our angle of incidence, we have light traveling from water to air. And the angle of incidence is an incident ray or a line that makes with the perpendicular to the surface. So here's our surface, and we're talking about the perpendicular to our surface. Right here. Anytime we talk about a perpendicular to the surface, this is known as the normal. So just a side vocab word. Anytime we're talking about a perpendicular to the surface, that is known as the normal. So back to this. A incident line or ray makes with a perpendicular to the surface is known as the normal. So here we have a ray of light coming in, and this angle right here is known as our angle of incidence. Now our second angle is the angle of refraction. Now the angle of refraction is the angle made by a refracted ray with the perpendicular to the refracting surface. So here we're perpendicular to our normal, and it's going to make another line out this way. This is our angle of refraction. You'll notice that the angle of refraction is always larger than the angle of incidence. Our last angle is the angle of reflection. At some point, this angle becomes so great that the light is not refracted and travels past through the surface, but it is brought back down below the surface. And this angle is called the angle of reflection. It should be said that the angle of reflection and the angle of incidence that causes the reflection are always equal to each other. So as we're talking about that, the angles of incidence, the angles of refraction, and the angles of reflection are all measured from the normal. So if we talk about what is the angle of refraction, it is never from the surface. It is always from the normal. It's also good to know that the angle of incidence, it will always be equal to the angle of reflection and never equal to the angle of refraction. So if we are looking to name this angle and you don't quite know what it is, but you know that it has the same angle as the angle of incidence, you know that it must be the angle of reflection, because the angle of reflection is always the same angle of incidence. Likewise, if you know this, you don't know what this ray is, but you know its angle differs from the angle of incidence, you would know that is an angle of refraction, because the angle of incidence and the angle of refraction always differ. So these are our three angles. Let's move on to some other terminology.